निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी देशतारिणि जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय गुरुदेवा गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा हरि जोर हरि बोल। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। समवेत भक्तवृंद की जय। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतपथकमलं श्रीगुरुवैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथानुत्तप्तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान सहगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीना बंधु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमस्ते। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। So we are starting, Lakshmi Mataji.
Yes, Mataji, sure.
Yeah. So Hare Krishna, welcome again for our regular Srimad Bhagavad Gita sessions. And today we will be discussing from chapter 14 entitled The Three Modes of Material Nature. And today we are going to start this chapter and we are going to cover the first 5 shlokas from the 14th chapter. As the Bhagavad Gita is progressing, things are getting more and more interesting actually. To give a little recap of the 13th chapter. The 13th chapter, we know the beginning, how Arjuna puts across 6 questions to Krishna. What is Kshetra, that is material body? Who is Kshetragna, that is the soul and the super soul? Prakriti, the material nature. Purusha, the supreme enjoyer, the supreme personality of Godhead. Gnanam, the knowledge of Kshetra and Kshetragna. And Neyam, the object of knowledge. So all this very elaborately Krishna explains. And here we understand that when it comes to Kshetragna, there are 2 Kshetragnas, the soul and the super soul. The soul, who is a knower of the present one body, and super soul, the knower of all the bodies. He is the Anu Vibhu. So there are a lot of differences similar between the soul and the super soul. And soul, both are eternal, immovable, then non-perishable. See, both are there. But the soul, although it is eternal, although it is Sachidananda, although it is qualitatively same as Super Soul, nonetheless, because the soul is conditioned in its conditional state, in its constitutional position, it is as good as the Super Soul in terms of its quality, in terms of its eternality of its nature. Although quantitatively it's very negligibly small, but in its conditional state, it identifies with the body with which it is engaged within, and hence uh, goes through unlimited miseries and sufferings. So this is the condition of everybody's soul. So that is Kshetrajna. And when it comes to Prakriti, Prakriti is the feminine part, the material nature, and Purusha, the supreme enjoyer, the supreme personality of Godhead, it's the representation of a male personality. Now, in the shlokas of the 13th chapter, the Purusha, the Jiva is also considered as Purusha. So under Purusha heading, we have both the Jiva as well as the Supreme Lord. The reason why Jiva is also called as Purusha is the Jiva considers himself as a Purusha. The Jiva wants to be the supreme enjoyer, the supreme benefactor, the supreme controller, the cause of everything. And so he feels himself to be the Purusha. In that aspect, Jiva is called as Purusha, but the real Purusha is the supreme personality of Godhead alone, who is the real controller, the cause of all causes, the ever unchangeable cause and effect personality. And we should also understand the 6 questions pertain to only 3 topics. The 3 topics are Jiva, Prakriti, and Purusha. So Jiva, Prakriti, Purusha, the living entity, the material nature, and the supreme personality of Godhead. These are the only 3 topics which are in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita also. These are the 3 main topics: Jiva, material nature, and the supreme Lord. On this, the 6 questions are pertaining to these 3 topics only. And interestingly, so now we are coming to the 14th chapter, the modes of material nature. So if you see 3.27, Prakriti Kriyamanani Gune Karmani Sarvasha Ahankara Vimudhatma Kartaham iti manyate. So it says that for an action to be performed, the living entity considers himself to be the doer of the activity, but in reality, it is the Prakriti, the material nature, who is the actual doer. So in that terms, it is said the material nature is the doer. The Jiva considers himself to be the doer. But we also know that Supreme Lord is the doer. So who is the real doer? Who is the real doer? The Jiva is the real doer in the sense that he is the one who desires that I want this. When he considers that he wants something, that he has, suppose if I have to go from here to market, first me, the living entity, I should desire. Even if I simply sit here, then I will not be able to go to wherever I want to go. So first, the desires are put across by the living entity. The material nature facilitates that desire. It facilitates through all the surroundings, through the external media or whatever. The material nature facilitates, and that desire is sanctioned by the Supreme Lord. Sometimes we want to do something, but just doesn't happen because there is no sanction of the Supreme Lord. But it is designed in such a way that in every step, whatever you do, if it is stopped and it does not happen, then we may start wondering that maybe I'm not the doer. But the material nature is designed in such a way that most of the times we feel that, yeah, I desired, I did it, it is because of me, it is happening. And we are entrapped for a long time in the illusion that I am the doer. But it is only the putting forth across the desires is the only control which the Jiva has for an action to perform. Actually, it is the material nature that facilitates and the Supreme Lord that sanctions. So the 3 modes of material nature when we see, so now the connection between the 13th and the 14th chapter is, in the 13th chapter, 22nd shloka, the Lord says that this living entity, he gets engaged, or the entanglement of the living entity is due to the impact of the modes of material nature, the entanglement of the living entity, and also resulting in the transmigration, that is continuous perpetual cycle, going through the cycle of birth and birth and death. Transmigrations of a living entity happens due to its association with the modes of material nature. That's the 13.22 it says. So the living entity is completely under the influence and control of the material modes of material nature. So in the 14th chapter, we will know that we will learn how the living entity what are the three modes of material nature, what is its power, and how they entangle a living entity, and we can say that how a living entity gets entangled within the modes of material nature, and then what is its influence, and then how to get off that influence and be liberated. So that is the connection between 13th and 14th chapter. But in the 13th chapter also the Lord says that this knowledge about the Prakriti, Purusha and the living entity, when we know the position of everything as it is, and with that realization, when we work in this material world, that can be the cause of our liberation. Now in the 14th chapter, we will see Krishna says that of all the knowledge that he has given so far, the knowledge of the modes of material nature, its workings, its impact on the living entities, its influence on the living entities, and the living entities thereby understanding its influence and getting out of it, is the highest of all the knowledges he has given. Because we all are living in this material world, and the day in, day out, we are just spending our time. If we know in actuality what's happening around us, within us, without us, and what is the way out of this, then that is the greatest knowledge. And if we work towards it, we can get that liberation in this lifetime itself. So that what Prabhupada also emphasizes. So we'll start with and we'll discuss more. We'll start with the 14th chapter, first shloka. Okay, who wants to read?
Can I read?
Yes, who is that? Subara Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Param bhuya pravakshyami.
Sri Bhagavan Vach.
Mataji?
Sri Bhagavan Vach.
Sri Bhagavan Vacha. That is not being shown, Mataji.
You're not seeing? Oh, one second. Now?
It's seen, Mataji.
Okay.
We can see, Mataji. We can see.
Okay.
Param Sri Bhagavan Vacha. No, I am thinking of Sanskrit, this thing. Only English.
Okay.
Okay. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Param Bhuya Pravakshyami Gnananam Gnananam Gnanamuttamam Ajnatva Munaya Sarve Param Siddhim Ito Gataha. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Again I shall declare to you this supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, knowing which all the sages have attained the supreme perfection."
Yeah. So here Krishna in the purport also will see, he's saying this is the greatest of all the knowledge. So because it is, see now for example now, we do not know the degree in which we are getting controlled by the material nature and how we have lost ourselves in the modes of material nature. For example, suppose somebody goes to the jail and he meets the inmates of the jail. Then the inmates of the jail, some may say that, what's the problem here? I'm happy here. I get free food here. I don't have some work. They say if I just do, then I get some food. And there is no problem. The gate has a space, and there is a play space, and there is eating spaces there, and there is some recreation is there. I'm happy. So what's the problem? So, but then we who are standing outside the jail, we feel that no, that is not a place that we desire to live. But that is, if he says that, and suppose if somebody, one more person says this is not a jail only. This is not a jail. Where is the jail? It is not a jail. You are considering it as a jail. This is not even a jail. So that is our situation actually. Or one more clearly, if you want to understand, sometimes we see that I think we all would have seen sometime or the other that some drunkards will be lying on the side of the road. They'll be like very intoxicatedly, they'll full sleeping. There'll be garbage. And sometimes we may also tumble on them. Like that it becomes, oh, this fellow is sleeping here. Like that we may just cross and go. But at times when if they get up and somebody asks, how are you, sir? Ah, very happy. He'll say he's very happy. And we know that what is that happiness he's enjoying. He is in midst of garbage. So that is our situation. Our original position is with the Supreme Lord. In the spiritual world, there is no misery, there is no suffering, there is no old age, there is no birth, there is no death, and there is no disease, and there is no hunger. There is only bliss. That is the spiritual world. But what we have done is we have forgotten about it. We are in this material world and we are quite comfortable here. That is our, let's be honest about it. We are quite comfortable. We may feel that, oh, that this is paining, or my relationship, something happened, or my son or my daughter or my whatever. We may cry, but internally we are quite okay with the situation, and we feel that we adjust in that situation and we be kind of positive about it, and we are kind of settled in this material world. We are not feeling that fish out of water kind of situation, that no, I cannot be here, I cannot be here. My position is in the spiritual world. I need to serve the Supreme Lord. That desperate desire is not there. So that is the reason that we put ourselves in a very comfortable situation and we go on. So when we know, when we come to that understanding, what is that, what we are, what is our real position, and what is this material world, and what is this material nature, what is the spiritual world, when that knowledge is within us and we work accordingly, that is, we need to continue living till our life is there, but we should have the proper understanding. That is like a driver who is driving in a thick traffic. He is driving, he's putting his brake, he's following the traffic rules, he's taking care that some children don't come or some other vehicle doesn't back. He's doing everything, but he is clear where he has to go. He is very clear about his destination. So that is what we are supposed to do if we want to come out of the entanglement of this material world. So we will read through the purport. Padma Mataji. I don't know. Oh, okay, Sudha Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
I think I did
Dandavat
unmute. Okay, next one I'll read. Doesn't matter.
Okay, so now who is reading? Padma?
Okay, I'll read them, Mataji.
Yeah.
The 7th chapter to the end of the 12th chapter, Sri Krishna in detail reveals the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, the Lord Himself is further enlightening Arjuna. If one understands this chapter through the process of philosophical speculation, he will come to an understanding of devotional service. In the 13th chapter, it was clearly explained that by humbly developing knowledge, one may possibly be freed from the material entanglement. It has also been explained that it is due to association with the modes of nature that the living entity is entangled in the material world. Now, in this chapter, the Supreme Personality explains what those modes of nature are, how they act, how they bind, and how they give liberation. The knowledge explained in this chapter is proclaimed by the Supreme Lord to be superior to the knowledge given so far in other chapters. By understanding this knowledge, various great sages attain perfection and transfer to the spiritual world. The Lord now explains the same knowledge in a better way. This knowledge is far, far superior to all other processes of knowledge thus far explained. And knowing this many attain perfection. Thus, it is expected that one who understands this 14th chapter will attain perfection. Thank you,
Yeah.
Mataji.
Yeah. So that way, this chapter is very special in the sense that in this chapter we can actually relate very well our situation, because when the chapter elaborates itself through the details of the different modes, we can understand everybody may not know us properly, but we know us very well, or at least that much, at least we should have the humility to accept what we are for ourselves, that we will know which guna is prominent in me. See, now the three modes, how they work is, see, everything is within the three modes, sattva, rajas, and tamas. This mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. This is the main thing. Like if we say three colors, if we say it is like three colors, like yellow, maybe red, or some blue or whatever, it is like three colors. So it is the combinations in the colors. Now we can like unlimited combinations. We can do 1 drop and 7 drops and 12 drops, 2 drops, like that. Unlimited combinations, unlimited shades we can have with these three colors. So that is why we see there in 84 lakh species. That is why we see the different human beings. That is why we see the different karmas. That is why the different natures. So no two persons are alike. Even in the facial look, maybe to some extent, if they're alike, in their thought, every single thought, no two persons alike, think alike. It's impossible to get that every single thought I and you are thinking same way. No, that does not happen at all. Does not happen at all. That is in that variety, the three modes work across 84 lakh species and across all the different living entities under each species. That is the need. That is how we get entangled. But and that is not that it is not absolutely not within our control. It all starts that with each living entity having its kind of desire, and with that desire, that particular desire is facilitated by the material modes with a particular combination, and that particular combination has been sanctioned by the Supreme Lord. So every living entity, his desire, that gets facilitated and that gets sanctioned. So it is absolute, it is innumerable desires, unlimited combinations. So we just cannot understand within our limited brain. But what we can understand within our limited brain is how my mind is working. Where is my inclination? How I am getting entangled? What are the things that which I desire to associate? What is good for me? What is not good for me? If I don't want, what is the kind of desire I can have? What is the prayer I can lead? How, so that the Supreme Lord helps me to get what the other thing, not the, see, naturally my body may get inclined to or bent towards a particular action or a particular thought, because that is, I have been conditioned. But I can consciously think to be the other way, because now I have the understanding, now I have the knowledge, now I understand, have the higher understanding, I have a good association, I have been put under a right parampara. So with that understanding, I may choose to be on the right side. Then if I choose to be on the other side, what is that I should do so that the right modes affect me? So it is very important to understand this. So Prabhupada says that the knowledge given in this chapter is the highest. That way we can change ourselves and prepare ourselves to go to the spiritual world in this lifetime only. So we'll go to the next shloka. Padma read, Sudha Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandat Pranam.
Dandat.
Idam jnanamupashritya mama sadharmyamagataha sarge pinopajayante pralayena vyatanti cha. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. By becoming fixed in this knowledge, one can attain to the transcendental nature like my own. Thus established, one is not born at the time of creation or disturbed at the time of dissolution.
So here two important things Krishna says that, see, he said that this is very important knowledge. And by that what will happen? We'll get two benefits. One benefit is one can attain the transcendental nature by my own. Who does not want to attain Krishna's, attain a nature like Krishna? Who does not want? Everybody wants. And second is, one is not born at the time of creation or disturbed at the time of dissolution. That is, one can escape the cycle of birth and death, which is the real misery. That is the source of all misery, that we are born in this material world. That is the real misery. So one can avoid that. There is no more cycle of birth and death for you, and you will attain a transcendental nature like Lord Supreme Lord. So these are the two benefits you will get by being fixed in this knowledge. What is being fixed in this knowledge? That is understanding, getting a realization, acting through it, and always in this lifetime, the life, how much time we have, understanding and always practicing it and acting accordingly. That time we can get the benefit of this knowledge. Yeah, Parpat Hema Malini Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. After acquiring perfect transcendental knowledge, one acquires qualitative equality with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, becoming free from the repetition of birth and death. One does not, however, lose his identity as an individual soul. It is understood from Vedic literature that the liberated souls who have reached the transcendental planets of the spiritual sky always look to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, being engaged in his transcendental loving service. So, even after liberation, the devotees do not lose their individual identities.
Here, this is very important here. That is, when we say that attaining a transcendental nature like the Supreme Lord means, that does not become that we'll be merged or we will become God. No. Jivera Swarupa Krishnera Nityadas. That always we are, and that is our eternal position. We can never be the Supreme Personality of God. That is not possible. So we can only be the servant of the Lord, but we will have the opportunity to serve the Supreme Lord. That is what we are looking for. So in the Vaikuntha planets or in the Krishna Loka planets also, the devotees of the Lord they have their independent individual identity as the servant of the Lord, but they are completely blissful. The nature means they also do not have to go through the cycle of birth and death. Then there is always happiness, then there is no disease, there is no death, and then there is no old age, there is no time factor affecting you. So all that things even we will get, that benefits we will get, but we will always remain the transcendental servants of the Supreme Lord, and that will give us the supreme joy. So that way, what is Prabhupada telling here? Yes, continue reading Himalayani.
Hare Krishna. Generally, in the material world, whatever knowledge we get is contaminated by the three modes of material nature. Knowledge which is not contaminated by the three modes of nature is called transcendental knowledge. As soon as one is situated in that transcendental knowledge, he is on the same platform as the Supreme Person. Those who have no knowledge of the spiritual sky hold that after being freed from the material activities of the material form, this spiritual identity becomes formless without any variegatedness. However, such as there is material variegatedness in this world, in the spiritual world, there is also variegatedness. Those in ignorance of this think that spiritual existence is opposed to material variety. But actually, in the spiritual sky, one attains a spiritual form. There are spiritual activities, and the spiritual situation is called devotional life. That atmosphere is said to be uncontaminated, and there one is equal in quality with the Supreme Lord. To obtain such knowledge, one must develop all the spiritual qualities. One must thus develop the spiritual quality is not affected either by the creation or by the destruction of the material world. Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mataji.
So, in the 15th chapter, next chapter, we know that how the material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. That is that they give the example of the banyan tree, which is upside down like that. So every details that is present in the material world. So now we see that material world is full of variegatedness, or we feel that something should be happening, bro, in this material world. Otherwise, the life may become a little boring. So much of variety is there. Everything is there in the spiritual world, because what material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. So when there is a reflection means what? There is something already existing. So reflection is there means there is original also something is there. So the varieties what we see in the material world is already there in the spiritual world. Plus the bonus is all the positive things are there in the spiritual world. There is no misery at all. There is no time factor that is affecting us. So that is so we don't have to think that the material world is full of variety and spiritual world is boredom. Nor we should not need not think that the spiritual world is just like a light or something like emptiness or something like a void kind of thing where there is then I may get lost there. No, It is just that it is simple, like a person in the prison who is thinking that the prison cell is better than the world outside. But we know who is standing outside that prison is not a better place. You may get all the facilities, you may get a VIP prison, but prison is a prison. Then there is a limitations for a prison. Prison is not like a regular citizen. A regular citizen and citizen within the prison there is a lot of difference. He may be in a VIP prison house. So similarly, living in the spiritual world and living in the material world is totally two different things altogether. We cannot even understand. But because of our limited understanding, today we are so much comfortable in the material position that Prabhupada emphasizes to say that don't even think that there is no variety in the spiritual world. There is all the variety. So we can aspire to go there, and by understanding this knowledge and practicing it in our life in this lifetime. Okay, we'll go to the next shloka. Namita Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Mamyo nirmahad brahma tasmin garbham dadhami aham sambhava sarva bhutanam tato bhavati bharata. Translation by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The total material substance called Brahman is the source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the births of all living beings, O son of Bharata.
So, in the first two shlokas, Krishna tells about the glory of the knowledge of the material modes, the glories of the knowledge of the workings of the material modes, its connection with the Supreme Lord and connection with the living entities. So, he says that knowledge is by understanding it and practicing it and realizing it, one can completely be liberated, get out of the cycle of transmigration and attain a nature like Krishna. So that way he glorified that knowledge in first two shlokas. And in third and fourth shloka, Krishna tells that how a living entity gets associated with the material nature. How does he come in contact with the material nature? That is telling in third and fourth shlokas. See, now we understand that there is a spiritual internal potency of the Lord. That is a spiritual world, pure spirit. Pure spirituality is in the internal potency, and there is the external potency. It is pure material, filled with matter only. Then there is something called as a marginal potency, where we all living entities come in, where we have a soul which is spirit in nature, which has quality like this, like fully spiritual quality. It has eternal bliss and Sajidananda. But we are conditioned that soul, and so it inclines itself towards the external energy. It is the internal energy of the Lord, the soul of the living entity, but because of its conditioning, it aligns itself or considers itself as part of the external energy. So we are called as the marginal potencies, and the marginal potency, we always have a choice to either be spiritual or be material. So that is what we see the different people in this world. We see totally materialistic people who are absolutely, they don't want to have any idea about the spirituality, and they are very comfortable in the wherever situation they are situated. And there are pure devotees of the Lord who know what they're doing, why they're doing, like the Shad Goswamis, who know that the goal of their life, and they're just completely engrossed in the service of the Supreme Lord, internally, externally, 24/7, and that way they are also very peaceful. Because although they are in the marginal potency, they in consciousness, they are completely in the internal potency of the Lord. And then people like us who understand that, but who like to be like this, and who try to be like that, and we end up being like this, and we are in the suffering condition, trying here, there, and by then our life is getting kind of over. So we are the in-between people, where time and again consciously we need to focus and try to align ourselves with the internal potency of the Lord. So now what happens is, we know the 24 elements, the material world made of 24 elements, and one is Pradhana. Pradhana is the, Pradhana means see, Mahatattva means the material world, and there is a spiritual world, and Mahavishnu, he glances to the material world. He glances. So what happens is, the modes of material nature are there. That is the Prakriti. So she is the female counterpart. The Prakriti is the material nature, which is the female counterpart. And we have Purusha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the male counterpart. And what we living entities are there, the Purusha, the Supreme Lord, impregnates the living entities into the womb of the material nature. So what happens is, now when he impregnates, then all the living entities come into action. And based on what they come into action, based on what were their previous desires, and when they left their body or were during annihilation, we have so many desires, no? And that desires are put in the Shushupta stage during annihilation or during our death. And then they again come back to active stage when the Supreme Lord impregnates the living entities into the womb of the material nature. So this is happening time and again for eternity. This is what is happening. That is, we die, we again are, we come back to next life based on our previous desires. Then same thing happens. Otherwise, what happens? The day of Brahma ends and night of Brahma comes. There is a minor annihilation, and minor annihilation, we all go to Sushupta stage, and again we are brought back. And otherwise, there is the end of life of Brahma will happen. Major annihilation happens, major destruction happens. For a very long time, we are in the Sushupta stage, in the sleeping stage. Again, we are brought back to life. How we are brought back to life is the Purusha, the Supreme Lord, injects the living entity into the womb of the Prakriti, material nature, and the three modes keep on started activating like yeast, like that we know, no, fermentation, like that. They activate, and how does it activate? Every living entity has a particular desire, has a particular background, has a particular karma. Based on that, that combination of modes get affected into that living entity, and the living entity is seen for what they are. They may be humans, or in 84 lakhs, any kind of species they may be. And in human beings also, what kind of nature they are, male, female, good, bad, sattva, rajas, all that cycle continues. This has been happening since time immemorial. So this is how the living entity come in contact with the material nature. So we will read the purport. Now Kishori, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yeah.
Thank you. Purport. This is an explanation of the world. Everything that takes place is due to the combination of Kshetra and Kshetragna.
Yeah, Kshetra means the
body,
material body, Kshetragna means the soul and the super soul. So this combination is what is actually happening. Yes, Mataji.
the body and the spirit soul. This combination of material nature and the living entity is made possible by the Supreme God Himself. The Mahatattva is the total cause of the total cosmic manifestation, and that total substance of the material cause is in which there are three modes of nature, is sometimes called Brahman. The Supreme Personality impregnates that total substance, and thus innumerable universes become possible. This total material substance, the Mahatattva, is described as Brahmana in the Vedic literature, Mundaka Upanishad 1.1.19. Tasmad etat Brahma nama rupam annam cha jayate. The Supreme Person impregnates the Brahmin with the
Mataji,
seeds of
Supreme
the
Person
living entity.
impregnate that Brahman. Aram se. Slowly you can read.
The 24 elements, beginning from earth, water, fire, and air, are all material energy, and they constitute what is called Mahat Brahma, or the great Brahman, the material nature, as explained in the 7th chapter. Beyond this, there is another superior nature, the living entity. Into material nature, the superior nature is mixed by the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thereafter all living entities are born of this material nature. The scorpion lays its eggs in pile of rice, and sometimes it is said that the scorpion is born out of rice, but the rice is not the cause of the scorpion. Actually, the eggs were laid by the mother. Similarly, material nature is not the cause of the birth of the living entities. The seed is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they only seem to come out as product of material nature. Thus, every living entity, according to his past activities, has a different body created by this material nature. so that the entity can enjoy or suffer according to his past deeds. The Lord is the cause of all the manifestation of living entities in this material world.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna
So,
Mataji.
yeah,
Thank
so
you.
here the
And
analogy is very beautifully given that the scorpion lays its eggs in its pile of rice, and after sometimes the eggs hatch and we feel that the babies are coming out of the rice. But actually, rice is not the source cause for the scorpions to come. It is a scorpion mother who had laid its eggs. Similarly, the Lord impregnates the living entities unto the womb of the material nature. So it apparently seems the material nature is the cause for all the living entities' birth, but it is not the material nature. It is actually the Supreme Lord is the cause of all the manifestation of living entities in this material world. We would have understood it fully, we would have understood it partially, we would have understood very little. Nonetheless, we should just understand that we are born because of our own desire, which has been facilitated by the material nature and which has been sanctioned by the Supreme Lord. So it is always possible for us to change our desires and do the needful, and that way we get the right benefit. So this much if you understand also is enough. Otherwise it is quite technical about it. Nandini Mataji, next one.
Hare Krishna Mataji. सर्व योनिषु कौन्तेय भूर्तयः सम्भवन्ति याः तासां ब्रह्म महद्योनिरहं बीजप्रदापितः. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving father.
Purport also. You read the purport also.
Okay, thank you, Mataji. Perfect. In this verse, it is clearly explained that the Supreme Personality of the Godhead, Krishna, is the only original father of all living entities. The living entities are combinations of the material nature and the spiritual nature. Such living entities are seen not only in the planet, but on every planet, even on the highest where Brahma is situated. Everywhere there are living entities. Within the earth, there are living entities, even within water and within fire. All these appearances are due to the mother, material nature, and Krishna's seed-giving process. The purpose is that the material world is impregnated with living entities who come out in various forms at the time of creation according to their past deeds. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. This is a very important verse which we have heard before many times. So the original father of all living entity is Sri Krishna only. So only that way we are all living entity. We are all living entities connected with each other because we have the same Supreme Father. We are all brothers and sisters, we say, no? So that is because we have the same Supreme Father. So because he is the one who impregnates all of us into the womb of material nature, and then according to our desires, our past deeds, our karma, we get affected by certain combinations of the modes of material nature, and that is how we are, how we look, how we act, how we think, how we desire. But we always have the choice of now coming to a higher understanding and always understand and getting ourselves involved in the devotional service of the Lord and changing our destinations. So that is always given. Although we have been given a playground to play based on our past deeds and desires, nonetheless, through acharyas, through preaching, through understanding, through scriptures, through shastras, to Guru, we have all the opportunities to understand what is the actual highest goal. And if we can choose to go in that path and make perfect our lives. Although we have been given a playground to play, we time and again we have been given the right thoughts, understanding, knowledge, shastras, so that we can still perfect our lives and change our destiny. So we'll go to the last shloka for today.
Mataji, Hare Krishna. What is this? Within the earth, there are living entities, even within water and within fire. Within fire, how is it?
There are certain living entities, it seems. Means we see that only some moths are there, they will die like that. Apparently, there are certain living entities which we cannot see who are able to live in that Agni like that.
Okay. Okay, Mataji, thank you.
So idea is everywhere living entities are there.
Okay, Mataji, thank you.
Okay, this shloka wants to read.
Can I, Mataji?
Ha, Hema Malini.
Yeah. If
Yes.
I mean, somebody wants to read who was not read, it's okay, Mataji. Otherwise, I'll do
Okay,
it.
Ambika Mataji.
Okay, Mataji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Madhavi.
Yeah.
Sattvam rajastama iti guna prakriti sambhava nibhadanti mahabaho dehe dehinam avyayam. Translation by Prabhupada ki jai. Material nature consists of three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, O mighty armed Arjuna, he becomes conditioned by these modes. Shall I read the purport also, Mataji?
Yes, yes.
Purport: the living entity, because he is transcendental, has nothing to do with this material nature. Still, because he has become conditioned by the material world, he is acting under the spell of the three modes of material nature. Because living entities have different kinds of bodies in terms of the different aspects of nature, they are induced to act according to that nature. That is the cause of the varieties of happiness and distress.
So we should not think that why he is happy, why I am distressful, or why she is beautiful, why I am not beautiful, why male, why female, why rich, why poor. Everything is answered here actually. And interestingly, see now in the previous chapter, if we see from 13:8 to 12, there are 20 qualities, different ways by which we can the ways by which we can get closer to the Lord. That is through the process of devotional service. That is process actually. That is through cleanliness, through tolerance, through equanimity. Develop the qualities by which we can perfect our lives. So in that, one of the qualities is to render devotional service. That is devotion to the Supreme Lord incessantly. That is without stoppage, continuous. So constant devotion to the Supreme Lord. So the other qualities, 19 qualities, are so that a person develops constant devotion to the Supreme Lord. Or when we have constant devotion to the Supreme Lord, the other 19 qualities manifest. So when Bhagavad Gita is considered, the problem statement is also given, the process given, the solution is given, everything is given. It is up to us to choose how much we want to do, how soon we want to do, how soon we want to perfect. We have the choice of loitering in this material world for quite some more lifetimes also, or we have been given a process, opportunity, a knowledge, a thought, idea, scriptures. Then we have people, we have the what is parampara, to accept and perfect our lives in this lifetime also. Everything has been given to us, and we are the one fortunate souls who are in touch with such kind of knowledge, because there are many outside here who do not have that knowledge, and they are bewildered because everybody is getting equally beaten up, more or less, by this material nature, one time or the other. Throughout the life, nobody can say that they are never beaten up by material nature. No, nobody can claim. Nobody can claim that I have always been blissful. No. From small children to elderly old people, they have hundreds of stories in their life to say that how they are being beaten up by the material world, material nature. But sometimes people are just bewildered, they're just lost, they get into complete distress, not knowing why is this happening in my life. But when we are been given this knowledge, we know why things are happening, how they are happening, technically how they are happening, what is the solution for all this, is there a solution or not. So all this has been given to us by the grace of Prabhupada and the Parampara, and it is up to us to really catch hold of it and pray for each other and do the best, and that way perfect our lives. At least we understand that where am I standing, where I am supposed to go. Sometimes we are in a place, we don't know where to go, left or to go right, we don't know where we are. That time we have to put the GPS and see where am I. So now it is not like that. We know why the situations, if we are in a particular situation, why we are, or if we are in a very good position or situation, how can we make the best use of it. So we know it, and we can get out of this entire entanglement of the modes of material nature, and be an eternal servant of the Supreme Lord. Thank you very much. We ended early, but there is more to say in the further shlokas of this chapter, because modes of material nature is one that everybody can very well relate, and we can connect, very well relate and connect and understand. Thank you very much. Granthra Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you, Mataji, for the wonderful
Thank you,
explanation.
Mataji.
Thank you,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna. Very nice
Pranam.
lecture,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna, Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Wonderful
Thank you,
session.
Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Okay.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
So we are leaving.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you. Dandavat Pranam Mataji.
Dandavats.
Mataji, shall I end the session, Mataji?
Ah, yes.
Okay, thank you.